Hey guys, thanks for joining me for another video. Welcome to the Random Watch Dude channel. Before I go ahead with the video today, I just wanted to say thank you again to everybody who's subscribed to the channel. The channel's still very young. Started the channel in November just to talk about watches and my experiences with watches and my watch journey. Just to date, as I make this video, we've got just short of 850 subscribers, so I'm absolutely over the moon with that. I really appreciate it. Obviously, the more subscribers that we get onto the channel, the better the content's going to get, the more I'm likely to invest in gear and editing and all that kind of fun stuff that we like to watch our other YouTube channels indulge in. So thanks guys for subscribing, those that have, and if you haven't, don't be shy. As I said, the more people that subscribe to the channel, the more content I'm going to be able to make, and the better the video, the audio and the editing is going to get as well. So thanks guys, and just a reminder, if you haven't, please do subscribe to the channel. And today I want to talk about Rolex again. Rolex is certainly never short of a lot of views. If I make a video about Rolex, I certainly get an awful lot of views, and I'm very fortunate to have a few Rolex. As you can see, I've got two here that to talk about, and also a few experiences with Rolex. And today I wanted to talk really about a subject which is quite close to my heart, actually, which is with regards to the I guess, you know, if you were to be narrowing down your collection and also narrowing down your sights in terms of which Rolex to go for, i.e. you only wanted to own one Rolex, which would you go for? Would you go for one of these really difficult to get models, as you can see here, like a sports model on oyster steel? This particular one is a GMT Master 2, commonly referred to as the Batgirl. It's the BLNR. Batgirl, Bruce Wayne, Batman on a Jubilee, if you want to call it that as well. So very fortunate to have this. I got this just over a year ago from one of the Rolex authorised dealers here in Auckland in New Zealand. So this is a sports watch which is commonly very difficult to get hold of. It's not an uncommon watch. It's not a rare watch. So in terms of availability, the reason this one is difficult to get your hands on is essentially because the resale value on these is very high. It's actually higher than the retail value. So you tend to have to be able to, I don't know, if you want to put one of these on your wrist and get it from your local AD, you've really got to jump through a few hoops. We all know that. I'm not going to talk about that in this video. We all know how that works. Or you can go and buy one from a flipper or a grade dealer, but you will be paying over the retail value for this watch. The wait list on this watch, let's say, is anywhere between, depending on your spend history, you know, it could be 3 months if you've got a fantastic spend history, if you've bought a lot of watches, or you could have put your name down for this watch 5 years ago and still not have had the call from the AD. You know, that's the kind of watch that this is. So I'm going to compare this type of watch, this hard to get type of sports watch, with a Rolex Datejust. Now, this is also a watch that I picked up recently. This is mine. I got this from the same Rolex AD that I got the Batgirl from. This is a Rolex Datejust 36, and as you can see, this one is on the same kind of bracelet as the Batgirl. It's on the Jubilee bracelet. This one has the lovely palm motif dial. Absolutely love this dial, guys. I know it's not everybody's cup of tea, and I know for some of you, you know, probably makes you feel a little bit sick just to see it, but I love it. I think this is fantastic. So I picked up this watch. Ironically, I kind of got my Rolex out of order because I got the hard to get Rolex before I got the relatively easier to get Rolex. So both about a year apart, and here they are together, by the way. So as you can see, let's just get them nice in the light there. So what we have here on the right is a 40mm diameter GMT Master 2, and this is a 36mm diameter Rolex Datejust. So just to give you an idea of the size differences there, the Datejust definitely wears smaller. Although I think you'll notice this quite clearly in this picture. It's quite evident, actually, isn't it, that the dials, the actual face, if you like, of the watch is pretty much the same. There's hardly anything in it at all. Even the hand sizes are very similar. What I really like, by the way, just to diversify slightly, what I really like about the hands on the Datejust is the massive seconds hand. You can just see it here, just sweeping around there. For a 36mm diameter watch, it's got a huge seconds hand. It's chunky and it's very long, goes right to the extremities of the dial, and that actually helps to give this face, I think, a bit of substance and a bit of magnitude, if you like, which, you know, just is one of those little subtle things that Rolex does, I think, really, really well. You know, just some of the fine details here, as opposed to the, you know, you look at the GMT here with the seconds hand, you can barely see it. You've obviously got that huge blob of lume. It's just passing through the date cyclops there. It's just going to pop out. Here we go. Just popping out, sunrise there at 8 a.m. Yeah, so the hand is barely visible here on this GMT Master, whereas on the Datejust there, it's a great big thing. Look at that. So it adds a little bit of gravity, I think, to the Datejust, despite, you know, the Datejust on paper being a more diminutive watch in terms of its size. I actually think that there's less in it than you would think. You know, the GMT Master 2 is certainly a bigger watch. It's definitely a chunkier watch. Weight-wise, just feeling them now. Do you know what, guys? I'll be honest with you, and I'm not kidding. There is not a lot of difference in the weight of these two watches. I will put them on the kitchen scales later, actually, and I'll probably just leave a little pop-up text box to show you, just to explain what the weight differences are, but it doesn't feel like there's an awful lot of difference between them, and they're both sized for my wrist, you know, so they've both got roughly the same amount of bracelet going on. So look, I'm going to get to the point here. I wanted to do a quick comparison of these two models, and I'll just keep the Datejust in my hand here, because it is a lovely model, and I wanted to compare them and just answer a question, if I may, which is that if you were to only be looking for one Rolex in your collection, which, by the way, guys, I'll say it now, if you can get one nice Rolex from an AD, honestly, call it job done and walk away and never go back to that AD again, because the Rolex rabbit hole is such a deep and expensive one, and I think you guys that have got more than one Rolex are probably sat there giggling away in agreement with me. Once you get one, you kind of get addicted to Rolex because the quality is just so good for the money, and value is actually something I want to talk about as well. But if you were to be looking now to get yourself on the list to buy a Rolex, and it's going to be your only one, which one do you get? Maybe you're a little bit of an impatient guy. I'm certainly very impatient, I know that, very impatient, like most guys, let's be honest. Which one would you put yourself on the list for, and why? So I want to compare these two models just to give you an idea in terms of the relativity. This model here, this Datejust, particularly in the market that we're in now, if you were to put your name down for this model, I'd say even without a decent spend history, you'd probably be seeing this in 6 months or less. If you put your name down for this model now, with not a particularly great, let's say, purchase history, I'd say you're probably never going to get this watch. You may be lucky. You may be very, very lucky. But the likelihood is you're only going to get this watch if you've got a spend history with your authorized dealer. So to compare the two watches, this one you can get within 6 months with no spend history. This one you might get in 2 or 3 years, but you will definitely have to have a spend history as well. And by the way, as I said, some people are still waiting for this watch, despite having a good sales history and despite having a good relationship. It just hasn't worked out for them yet. So look, my view, and I'll just start with the sizes, guys. My view on this is that, you know, we've got a 36mm here, a 40mm here. There's no question that the 40mm is the more popular size, you know, for the generalist, for the general wrist, as it were. But the 36mm is no slouch, by the way, and I'll just put it on my wrist here. I'm surrounded by mosquitoes at the moment, so if you hear me swat now and then, forgive me, but they've all just suddenly decided to turn up now that I've come and sat down and recorded a video. So here's the 36mm. Look, the Datejust 36 on my 7.25 inch wrist, and I think it sits really, really nice. There's a mosquito there, look, you bugger. Off you go. So this sits really lovely on my 7.25 inch wrist. It's got a 20mm lug width here, but the clasp is still around the 18mm width. It doesn't go down to 16mm like it does on some of the older Datejusts. So the bracelet helps make this Datejust actually still feel quite chunky, because it's got the 20mm lug width still, and because it's still got quite a wide clasp here. I think this watch is, you know, to be honest with you guys, I'd say this is more of a refined gentleman's watch, and it's quite understated as well. Now, if I compare that, I'll just put that down. and put the GMT Master 2 on. So just to give you an idea of the relativities, the GMT Master 2 sits larger, quite considerably larger on the wrist, when you're actually looking at the watch from afar. It's still got the 20mm lug width, the same lug width as the Datejust, and the clasp is the same back here, so they're pretty much the same size at the lug and at the clasp, although they're both Jubilee bracelets, the Jubilee bracelet on the GMT Master 2 is chunkier. The links are slightly thicker, so it does have a chunkier, sportier feel to it. And there's no question when you look at the watch, I mean, it's a gorgeous watch, isn't it? I mean, what a sexy watch that is. It's beautiful, isn't it? It's very sporty and elegant. I've also said in a previous video that I think this is more of a kind of a dress watch than a sports watch in many respects, although I don't think many people would deny that it's got a sporty look about it, that's for sure. So it's a nice looking watch, but it definitely sits bigger on the wrist. And the other thing I'll say about this watch is it's significantly more, how can I put it, visible on the wrist, to the passerby, if you like. They notice this watch, and I've noticed this when I'm walking down the street on occasion, is it certainly catches the eye, whereas the Datejust, it kind of sits more conservatively on the wrist and doesn't stick out so much, and certainly doesn't draw as much attention. And if you're not really wearing the watch to draw attention, like most of us are buying Rolex not for the attention, are we? We're buying it because it's a superb piece of engineering, aren't we, guys? It's not man jewelry at all, is it? It's just great engineering. But certainly this Datejust is a lot more conservative and I think more gentlemanly on the wrist than the outgoing, outspoken, dare I say it, almost arrogant look that the GMT Master 2 has on the wrist. So I think, if you're choosing between these two models and you're choosing it for purely personal reasons, you just want to enjoy a Rolex on the wrist, I think the Datejust sort of kind of wins that competition, if you like, between these two watches, if it's just a purely personal choice. And also I want to talk about the specs briefly, because it's really interesting. From a cost perspective, this GMT Master 2 is considerably more expensive than the Datejust, and there are reasons for that. Of course, it's got the GMT movement in it, so it's got an extra complication with the GMT movement, and it also has obviously the bezel, the rotating bezel. But at the same time, guys, these movements are both pretty much identical, other than the GMT complication from a movement perspective. They've both got 70 hours power reserve, and they've both got the parachrom hairspring, and they've both got the anti-magnetism. The only significant difference in the specs really is the seals around the crown. This has got the trip lock, so 3 seals around the crown, whereas this, I believe, has 2. Which gives this 100 meters of water resistance. And actually, funnily enough, they've both got 100 meters of water resistance, but the sealing in the crown on the GMT is slightly more robust. There is another seal at the bottom, on the outside, at the bottom near the threads, which you can see, which you don't get on the Datejust. But to all intents and purposes, guys, the movements in these two watches are pretty much the same in terms of specs and standards, so there's not really much between them. But from a cost perspective, the GMT Master 2, I'm talking New Zealand dollars now, the GMT Master 2, after the recent price increase, which was an eye-watering 8.5% here in New Zealand, this watch is 19,000, and this watch is 13.5. So there's a massive difference. 40%, is that roughly 40% more to get yourself a GMT than it is to get yourself a Datejust. So where we've got to now, guys, is not only is the Datejust significantly easier to get hold of, particularly if you don't have a spend history, but it's also significantly cheaper, despite the fact that you can get both models on a nice Jubilee bracelet with a nice clasp. They've both got 100 meters of water resistance, and they've both got pretty much the same movement, other than the GMT complication in this one. So already, I think what we're starting to see here, guys, if you take all the hype and the hysteria out of the sports Rolex market, and you start to look at these two watches just for what they are and what they do, the Datejust is starting to really appear like a fantastic option, really, isn't it, in terms of availability, price, and specs. And then I kind of want to get, just getting towards the end of rounding this up, really, I want to talk about perception, what people think, because there's no question, guys, that, when it comes to perception, I don't think anybody gives a monkeys if you're wearing a Tag Heuer or an Omega, or a Grand Seiko. I don't think anybody notices those watches, or anybody really gives a monkeys what you're wearing. But all of a sudden, it does feel, doesn't it, that as soon as you put a Rolex on your wrist, there's no question that you do start to get judged. You start to get kind of characterized as somebody, or you start to get analyzed and assessed because you've got a Rolex, and therefore, people are going to have a preconceived probably perception of what they think a Rolex wearer might be or be like. Now, if I were to characterize these two watches, and I touched on it earlier, I mentioned it earlier, I think the Datejust, irrespective of what other people think of Rolex, I think the Datejust is a refined, gentleman's, conservative watch. I think the GMT Master 2 is a geezer's watch, if I'm honest with you. I think it's quite flamboyant. I think it's maybe a little bit excessive, particularly on the Jubilee bracelet here, which is a beautiful bracelet, but make no mistake, I think it's a bit of a show-off's watch. It's a bit of a geezer's watch. I love it. I love wearing it. And when you get to my age, guys, and I'm nearly 50, I don't really give a damn what other people think anyway. But if you do, if you're one of those people that cares about what other people think of you in terms of their perception of their perceived view of you because you wear a Rolex, and their perceived view of how much wealth you might have, then this is the watch for you if that bothers you. If it doesn't bother you, this is the watch for you if you want a Rolex, because if you don't care about the brand either, you might as well go and get yourself a $150 Seiko and be done with it. So there's the answer to that. I think perception-wise, I think the Datejust, for me, if you want to be just considered, and I think most of us do, don't we? We want to be considered as a conservative gentleman, refined and stately, a chap, then I think this is definitely the watch for you guys. The GMT Master 2's just got a bit too much going on. So, okay. Finally, guys, I just want to talk about value, because irrespective of price, we've also got the question of value. Which one is actually going to deliver value for money? Now, from an investment perspective, the value is 100% every day of the week and twice on Sundays with the GMT Master 2. This is, from an investment perspective, you cannot go wrong. If your AD phones you, even if you don't like this watch, even if you think it is a geezer's watch and you don't want people to think you're a geezer, if somebody offers you this watch at retail, buy it, because you'd be nuts not to, because you will make the very next day, even if you just put it in the safe and forget about it, you've got yourself an asset and you've made some money. You're not going to get that with this watch. With this particular watch, I'm probably, if I were to sell this tomorrow, I'd be lucky to get my money back, and I think it's very likely I'd lose 10, 15, 20%, particularly if I tried to sell it through a trader. If I tried to sell it privately, I might get my money back, potentially, if I found the right customer. But with this one, no. From a value perspective, guys, from an investment value perspective, it's all about the GMT Master 2. But I'd like to think that most of you guys watching this video are actually just watch dudes like I am, and you don't care about the perceived investment value. You care about value for money. Now, in terms of value for money, if we're comparing this one at, was this 19,000 New Zealand dollars, and this one at 13.5, this one wins every day of the week, absolutely every day of the week. And I think I'm getting to a stage now, guys, where I've pretty much talked myself, because I didn't really have a firm view on this, but I think I've talked myself now into making the decision that if I were to start right now without a Rolex and put myself out there and go to an AD and want to put myself on the list, and I said to the AD, I just want one and I want it in the next year, every day of the week, you're going to go for a Datejust, guys, and I thoroughly recommend this watch. I absolutely love it. I think it's, a terribly underrated watch. I know they're very, very common, if you like, out there in the marketplace, and you can get one of these used for less than retail as well. But if I were you, and if I was just going to buy one Rolex that was going to last me a lifetime, I'd wait. I'd go to the AD and buy one direct. I'd wait. I'd put myself on a list, and I'd get myself a Datejust. Forget the sports watches, guys. Without a spend history, it's not going to happen for you. Datejust is the way to go. And there you are. That's my view. Just look at that. And just for those of you guys like me that might be losing your short range vision, and you have to get yourself reading glasses now, if you want to, even read a text on your phone these days in less than perfect light, this Cyclops is, I know it's scorned by some, but it absolutely performs miracles in terms of being able to see the date. Except when, of course, as is happening right now, the minute hand is right in front of the date. But trust me, guys, as your eyes start to go, that's maybe why this is considered an old man's watch as well, because you can actually tell the time on it, and you can actually tell what the date is without squinting or putting on your reading glasses. So there you go. That was a little added bonus for you. Another little added bonus for why you should get yourself a Datejust, and a Rolex Datejust rather than a Seiko for $150 instead. And there you go, guys, bit of a ramble about the Datejust and sports watches versus dress watches in particular, I suppose, and which one to go for if you only wanted one. That's my decision, guys. I'd get the Datejust and forget this. If you get one, put it in the safe. Even if you don't like it, put it in the safe and just consider it an asset. But if you want to wear a watch and it's only going to be one and it's going to be a Rolex, it's got to be a Datejust, guys. That's my view. Get yourself on the Rolex website, get on that configurator and start picking your best configuration, because there are a lot of them. Thanks for watching the video, guys. As I said at the start of the video, please do subscribe if you haven't already. I really appreciate it. Sorry this video's turned into a bit of a ramble, but there's lots to talk about when it comes to Rolex. And thanks for watching, and I'll catch you on the next video. Cheers.